quick point on that, actually, and this is a phrase that's trotted out by conservative politicians too, Michael Gove, Kenny Badenoch and the like. Diversity is our strength in that context is a slur against the native populations of Europe and the UK, because implicit in that is that cultural homogeneity is weak and pathetic and requires the central government to change the demographics to correct it. And so whether or not they get out the side of the bed of economics or of culture, in all cases, the statement that migration is necessary implies that if left to their own devices, homogenous populations are defective in and of themselves. And I think that is something that needs to be properly framed, because if people understand that the ruling political class have that contempt for them, I think you will see the continued acceleration of support hemorrhaging away from these parties.
Yes, I mean, diversity is our strength only if you haven't read the work of Robert Putnam at Harvard, who's shown that by every metric that you would care to name, diversity makes life much harder for community cohesion. People are much less willing to put into a welfare state. If you look at how people vote with their feet, there's often not only white flight, but flight of other minorities once different groups move into their neighborhoods. You think about the Jews in New York, for example.
Or in Malmö. Malmö, Sweden.
Yes, exactly. Or the Jews leaving France on account of the anti-Semitism from primarily North Africans and their progeny there. So
Asians in San Francisco. I mean, there was the hashtag in 2020, Stop Asian Hate, relating to COVID, and it died a death when people realized the videos of the perpetrators of those attacks were not quite as white as Hamza Yusuf would have hoped.
There we go. And you can even find an example if it's necessary, just includes white people. So if you were to ask the Bostonians, the Protestant community in Boston, which was really a thriving center of sort of waspy North American culture in 1810, did the arrival over the next 30 years of Irish people to that community strengthen their culture? I think you would be hard pressed to find anyone who would have thought that. In fact, 50% of them no longer lived there after 30 years. And so that community was completely decimated and was never the same. And so it really often doesn't matter about skin color or anything else. It's the force of the pace, the scale, and the cultural difference is in 9 cases out of 10. If you've got high numbers, coming into a relatively cohesive community is devastating.
And this is why what we've been talking about, it helps to explain why, like the variety of factors to which we've been pointing, helps to explain. All of this helps to illustrate as well that you don't need to be some kind of swivel-eyed conspiracy theorist to go along with the idea that there is clearly an agenda of replacement migration afoot in the West, because you don't need to point to a single guiding intelligence or one person or a kind of moustache-twirling cabal of people who are plotting this. There can be a congruence of interests which begin from different places yet converge onto the same space with the same policy consequences and with the same kind of I would use the word ethnocidal consequences that Connor talks about there. Like if you kind of throw it in with you've got venal business elites who are addicted to cheap labor, and that's why they support it. You've got these, what Eric Kaufman would call these kind of left modernist types who are kind of not overtly in favor of weaponizing the presence of immigrants for race communism or racial identity politics, as the far left race communists are, but nevertheless think that it's much more jazzy to have a mixture of cultures within a certain domain. So you've got kind of the venal business elites, the left modernists, and then you've got the kind of full-blown race communists, all starting from different premises and all inhabiting fundamentally different moral universes and exhibiting different personal interests, and yet the consequences result. And I think that if we think of replacement migration as an emergent phenomenon in that way, rather than as a kind of top-down planned one, it's very useful and it helps us get off the hook from accusations of being excessively paranoid.
I think there's one thing missing from that as well, that is just the sort of intractable reality of international migration flows once they get going. once you have a sort of a beachhead, as it were, of people from a certain community, that's really where you're attracting the high agency individuals, because if they arrive somewhere and they've got no community support, or they've got nobody who they can take refuge with, then that's a very difficult process. There's a lot of friction involved there. But once those communities are established, it becomes so easy to just keep the numbers coming in. And with all the will in the world, you could even have a government that's semi-serious about stopping this. It's extraordinarily difficult as well. And so there is just that sheer
chain migration.
Yes, and the same goes with the migrant gangs as well. Once that business model is up and going, and Immigration Inc., as it were, all of the various people profiting from mass illegal migration, it's again very difficult. The onus is on the countries to then implement measures to stop that they might be reluctant to do for human rights reasons or whatever. And so while you're right, there are some positive motivations to this, there are also just some things that we're now unwilling to do.
Yes. So the once the process is underway, the bar that we need to get over in order to stop it in its tracks is much higher than it was at the beginning of the process in the first place. I would grant that as well.